Welcome to CivilNet. Today we're joined by Arda Haratunian, an AGBU Central Board member. Arda, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
So to start off, the Armenian General Benevolent Union has been doing a series of interviews, which are available online for our watchers. It's entitled Voices of Truth. So interviewees include Armenians from Artsakh who were affected by the 2020 Nagorno-Karabakh war, medical workers, and also Armenians from abroad. So can you tell us why AGBU decided to embark on this venture, on this project?
Because the truth is important and nothing is more powerful than first-person narratives. And that's really what this is. This is Voices of Truth, our first-person eyewitness accounts of the 2020 Artsakh war. And really, it's geared not just for our Armenian community. All of the interviews, all of the videos are translated also into other languages because Armenians really have to tell our story to non-Armenians. And because the personal narrative, the personal story is really the most powerful tool, capturing these voices immediately after the war gives us the power to really fight the disinformation that others put out there. I encourage everyone to watch them because when you watch the raw emotion in everyone from a young child to an elderly gentleman, there's no way you can say that that is not the voice of truth.
And oftentimes the human and individual stories can be overlooked and shadowed by politics and geopolitics. So why was it important to focus on the human aspect?
I'm glad you asked. I think that is what happens mostly. And unfortunately, what's covered in the news media, the mainstream media, and unfortunately on social media is not really driven by the human experience. It's driven by politicians. It's driven by bots. It's driven by others who want to control the narrative and ultimately control public policy. So capturing that individual story is so compelling and so powerful, you know, and all Armenians would say, if we only could have had the technology we have now 106 years ago. You know, I was talking to somebody about how really those stories were told through yellowed newspapers, you know, images of headlines and things like that. And it was really only in the 80s and 90s that we started capturing the voices of our genocide survivors. Until then, it was told by, like you said, politicians, policymakers, and nowadays, you know, technology is good, it's also bad. The bots are controlling the narrative and controlling the power. So we are putting, I think, through Voices of Truth, AGBU is helping to put the power back into the person, into the individual, into the really the victim who suffered that morning of September 27th. So having that power of telling the story from the first person, from the individual who woke up to war on the morning of the 27th of September, those couple of weeks immediately afterwards, anyone but Armenians were confused as to who started the war, why it started, was it planned, had Armenia prepared for it? We all know the truth. The people who were bombarded that morning know the truth. So that's where we are capturing that now, so that unlike the genocide, where those stories, the first person narratives weren't captured until the 1980s, 1990s, we were able to do it now and educate others. The idea of translating these is also so that we speak to the importance of telling non-Armenians.
And I found the title, Voices of Truth, quite striking. Can you tell us why it was decided to go for this title?
Because it's as simple as that. They're the voices, they're the true voices of the victims of a war that we did not want. That's simple. Don't you love when the answers are that simple?
Well, I suppose it makes my job a little easier as well. But I also wanted to ask if you can tell us a bit more about the interviewees. I mean, where did you and AGBU find these people, and what are some of the narratives that were coming out of these people?
So from the very first day of the war, obviously one of the 4 core pillars of AGBU is humanitarian assistance. So we also do education, culture, socioeconomic development. But from the first days of the war, we were extending a humanitarian hand. So we welcomed these displaced families into the Vaha Karapetyan Center in Armenia, as well as our other outreach that was being done. So the people who were interviewed were individuals who were impacted by the war, who came into the AGBU family almost from the first day. So that's where we found them. And really it was arbitrary who we spoke to. Whoever wanted to share their story, we said, let's videotape them. And that was really a team effort on the part of a lot of individuals, young people, the older people, the very educated, successful professional, the person who works with their hands. We covered everyone, because one thing about this war, it didn't discriminate. It impacted every single age group, every socioeconomic class, and these displaced families, you know, if you look at them, they could be anybody. So that was really the genesis.
What I also found quite interesting is that a lot of these people have very moving stories, stories that really can be graphic at times and very, very emotional. What's interesting, though, is that they are very willing sometimes to share these stories, and they want people to know. Did you find that? Did you notice that?
Yeah. And it's painful to watch. And I think most people's human reaction, when, thank God, we don't know it firsthand, but we've lived through it, you know, intergenerational trauma. I think our first reaction is, how can they even talk about it? And I think that speaks to something so critical, which is the resilience of our people. And if there's one thing we want non-Armenians to see, is that we are resilient and we will tell our story and share our truth if it means that another attack like this, another genocide, in the case of the genocide, will be avoided. The more people who have the ability to share these horrible stories, the more likely it is the world pays attention. You know, we all got a huge gift with President Biden finally recognizing the genocide. I mean, for many of us who've been working on this issue for decades, it's a no-brainer. Why did it take so long? And yet I'll take it, right? And now all of a sudden, more people are willing to listen to everything else. So throughout this war, I was talking to mainstream journalists. Suddenly, since President Biden's recognition, I'm able to follow up with them and say, well, remember when I said this and you ignored it? Or remember when we talked about that and you didn't give it much credence? And we at AGBU have, I think, done a terrific job of putting all together in one place. Voices of Truth is one of them. We also did, right after the launch of the war, we started these Activate emails almost daily to our global network of tens of thousands of volunteers that contained links to news stories, not Armenian news stories, links to other websites, links to historical documents. All of these, when you compound them, when you add them up, people will listen. Eventually, they will pay attention and ultimately not only help us as Armenians, help Artsakh, but also help prevent other atrocities.
I mean, I watched the interviews online and I found them very interesting, very moving. And as someone who comes from the UK, where war is quite an alien concept, it's so striking that these thousands of people have been affected in this way. Can we expect more interviews in this series? And can you also tell us how people can access and watch these interviews themselves?
Yeah, the simplest way is to go to agbu.org. It's a simple website. I mean, it's /Voices of Truth. But going to the AGBU website not only will give access to these interviews, but I think they'll find anyone who goes to our website. And we fortunately have a lot of non-Armenians who come to our website because we also have web talks, which are geared, again, to non-Armenians as much as to Armenians. When you land on that homepage, there is just a breadth and depth of information, content, quality content. So that's what I would encourage every single person to go to. I know you have a pretty significant following. So I would say even to your non-Armenian network of people, if you shared this, I think they would find it valuable as well. Whether we will be doing more, yes, we will be doing more as the opportunities come up. This brand of Voices of Truth is something that will keep going. we're hoping and praying it is not always because of atrocities, but just having the ability and the platform to share true stories that everyone can learn from.
Well, Arda, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Emilio.
And thank you for joining us on CivilNet.